What's up guys, it's the Saluki. This is going to be the final video in the Iraq series, and we began the series here in my room, and I thought that it would be best to end it here as well. I want to say a few words in retrospect. So first thing, I've just opened a Patreon because I want to be able to do this stuff full time. I want to be able to go to these Muslim countries which are a bit harder to get to. I want to go to other countries as well, but I want to get better equipment, and I want to be able to bring you the best content possible, basically. Getting to places like Iraqi Kurdistan is a bit expensive because it's not your regular tourist destination, especially throughout the pandemic where you need to get tested and all sorts of things. So if you want to donate and help me on my mission to go to more Muslim countries and bridge the gap between Jews and Muslims, and do more traveling and show you more cultures in general, then I'll be leaving a link to my Patreon in the description. So yeah, you can go ahead and donate, but only if you want to, only if you have the money, because we're all going through tough times now. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, moving on. So would I recommend traveling to northern Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan? Well, yes, basically yes, of course I would. It's an amazing place, but would I recommend it to Israelis? Would I recommend it to Jews? So let's start off with Jews. If you're Jewish and you have no correlation to Israel, then yeah, I think you certainly will have a good time in Iraqi Kurdistan. People will respect you, respect your religion, respect your culture. You can say you're Jewish as much as you want. Nobody will be offended or care. But if you're Israeli, then I wouldn't recommend it for one simple reason, which is the Israeli government. Not because of the Kurdish people, not because of anybody else, just because of the Israeli government, which essentially bars Israelis from visiting Kurdistan and Iraq in general. It's seen as a criminal offense. I don't really care because I'm willing to take that risk. I don't live in Israel anyway. And if I can never come back to Israel, then I can never come back to Israel. I'm just going to have to live with that because I've already made the move. But I wouldn't recommend like your average Joe that's living in Israel, born in Israel, and wants to go to and fro from Iraqi Kurdistan and Israel. I wouldn't do that. I'll find out if I ever do go back to Israel, if I will be questioned, interrogated. Probably, yeah. And I'll probably make a video about that as well. But yeah, I just wouldn't recommend it for those simple reasons if you're from Israel. If you are Israeli and you do happen to go, then don't go around telling people that you're from Israel like I did. I just did it for a video to prove a point, but essentially you can run into people from southern Iraq which are less happy with Israel, with the Israel-Palestine situation. So you might not want to run around saying that just because you never know. 99% of the people are nice and good and don't care that you're from Israel, but you can fall on that 1% which would be unhappy with that. So I would just say, don't go around saying it. So let's talk about why I do recommend it and why I do think you should go. So first of all, I don't travel much for landscapes or for architecture. I do enjoy it, but at the end of the day, it's about the people. And the people in Iraqi Kurdistan are probably the nicest, most hospitable, most congenial people that I've ever met. Really, I don't have words to express. You've seen multiple times in my videos where just because I'm a guest, just because I'm a foreigner, they don't even let me pay. The hospitality is really outstanding, something out of this world. Muslim hospitality, essentially. If I were to knock on random doors in the city or in the village, I promise you that if not the first and the second person that I would knock on their door and ask them to stay in their house, they would let me stay in their house. I was actually considering making a video like that, but I would just feel a bit uncomfortable, you know, like intruding with a camera. But anyway, really some of the nicest people I've met in the world. So friendly, so affable. And of course, besides that, it is a beautiful place in terms of landscape. It's green, it's lush, it's verdant, it's also desert-like. If you don't come from parts of the world with deserts and such, it really does resemble Israel and the rest of the Middle Eastern landscape. But as I said, I don't travel for landscape. The history there is really like Erbil is the cradle of civilization. It's you've got architecture dating back to 5th century BC, Mesopotamia. There is a lot to see, and I'm sure that if you want to see that as well, then you can research about it, and There's heaps to read. So yeah, that's why I would recommend it. Now let's talk a bit about the negative things, the things that you have to take into consideration before you go. You need cash. If you're going to Iraqi Kurdistan, you need to bring cash because many international credit cards simply don't work. So I would say just bring a set amount of cash. Try and plan out your trip, and the amount of cash that you think you will need, bring double, because like me, you can lose your phone, you can, I don't know, break your arm, something can happen, so you gotta have that backup, because if you will be stuck without cash, it will be a problem to try and get cash into Iraqi Kurdistan. So another con I'd like to discuss is electricity, power cuts. These things happen in third world countries, and it is a third world country, unfortunately. So it's something you have to take into consideration. If you're like me and you really hate the summer and can't imagine yourself being stuck in a room without air conditioning in the summer, then don't go in the summer. Or vice versa. If you're somebody that hates winter, they do have quite cold winters because it is like elevated a bit in mountainous terrain, mountainous region, then don't go in winter as well if you can't like bear not having the heat on in winter. I'm just saying this because I want people to know that it's not Dubai and it's just a country with a bit of problems. So besides that, you know, the roads aren't always the best, and basically all the things that you can imagine in a country which is from the third world. You know, you're not always going to have hot water, etc. If you're going to go on huge trips throughout the country, whether you rent a car or whether you use public transport, then just take into consideration as well that there aren't many pit stops with places with food. You don't have like gas station coffee and a meal deal or something. So you gotta, before you go somewhere like that, buy a bunch of falafel or something and take it on the way. This isn't a con, but it's one thing to remember as well, is the Kurds in the Kurdistan region don't like to be called Arabs. They don't see themselves as Arabs, and they're not Arabs essentially. They don't speak Arabic mostly. Well, the older generation does, and the young quite understands it, but just don't call them Arabs, they would get offended. You can speak to people in Arabic on the street because they won't be offended by that. They just know that you're a foreigner, and they probably oftentimes would speak more Arabic than English. So yeah, that's just one more thing to remember. And the big lingering question, is it safe? Well, I think this is a bit of a matter of perspective. I asked the locals, and now it's my turn to talk about it. So I felt very, very safe in Iraqi Kurdistan. I felt, these are things I can't say about other countries that I've been to, that I could just walk around in the street in the middle of the night, nothing would happen to me, nobody would attack me. And I always felt like if I got into any trouble, having seen the hospitality, then I know that the locals would always help out. And yeah, I just felt very, very safe in general. Didn't find any nefarious areas as well. As Mustafa said in the video when we were walking around the rich parts of Erbil, I asked him if there would be somewhere, you know, like a bit more crime struck. And he said there simply isn't. There isn't a neighborhood that's known for crime. Crime is essentially non-existent there, besides terrorism, of course. So one more thing before I go, I couldn't end this video without saying a huge thank you. I've actually done like 5 takes of this because I keep remembering more and more people, but a huge thank you to the lovely, generous, genial, amiable locals. Thank you to Halat, Muhammad and Bayad from Suleimania, to Badr Khan, to my dear friend Mustafa from Erbil, and to everybody that was there and that helped out and that showed me around. I can't thank you enough. And thanks to you, the viewer. Thank you for watching. Thank you for following me along this journey. And yeah, not to be too dramatic, thank you for watching. And as always, I love you. See you in the next one.